Hey everyone, I'm back again with Gabe, who is so kind to talk with me today about cars and electric vehicles. So, we're just going to kind of talk about a different range of subjects related to cars and what's happening in the stock market with cars or with some of the major car makers. Like, we know that America is trying to remain competitive with electric vehicles, and there are some car makers like Ford and GM that are trying to provide the latest and greatest EV vehicles to consumers, especially with the $7,500 tax credit. So there's all that going on, and I'm sure we have things to say about Tesla and kind of like how Tesla matches up with world competition in EV technology. So we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. So Gabe, what would you like to kind of start us off with cars and EVs?
Well, definitely. Well, of course, it's always great to be back.
Thank you.
Um, we can talk about Ford and the picket lines at the moment, given the fact that three-fourths of the auto manufacturers are now currently and actively on strike.
Oh yeah, like the big three, right?
The Ford's on strike, GM's on strike, and then there's another guy on strike too. I think it might be Stellantis is on strike too.
I could see that, yeah, because it used to be like Fiat Chrysler, probably.
Mhm. Which is very weird because I know that you've mentioned that a lot of super investors picked up Stellantis prior.
Yeah, yeah, they actually did, but maybe they did that before Detroit went on strike. Like I know Greg Alexander and I want to say Bill Miller and maybe Michael Burry. Don't quote me entirely on that, but some of those guys may have invested in Stellantis or some other like car related companies.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely interesting because it's very interesting development that actually happened. So Biden joined the picket line, which was very uncanny of him.
Mm, wow. And
Uh,
so what do you think's going on there?
well, saying well, we have to talk about like the different unionization operations that they have because like Ford is unionized, GM is unionized, Stellantis is unionized, but Tesla is not unionized actually.
Mm,
Because if you look into the bills too that they have, give me one second. There you go. If you look at the bills that they have proposed via through the EV credits, Biden made sure specifically to go off his way in essentially school for Tesla because Biden and Elon don't get along. It's hilarious, actually.
oh yeah. I I haven't known that really, but like I guess there's maybe some, I'm sure there's always some jockeying for, kind of trying to do things like I'm sure the government has its own agenda and Elon always has his own agenda, so I'm sure he's a strong personality.
Yeah, but it's very weird because in this situation, Tesla is actually the only one that's actually gonna somewhat benefit
Hmm.
from this because the fact they're not unionized, but the minimum pay is so low compared to the other unionized workers because with the Tesla employees, you get stock.
Ah, so I
Like
guess
your
they're
average
kind of
factory worker will get stock up to your upper compensation too.
I
So everyone
see.
always gets stock. So
Yeah, I
instead
mean, I
of
guess that helps some people. If people value Tesla stock, then that could be both good and bad, depending on if you like the stock and you think it will keep going up in the future. But if you're like, oh, I'm going to cash this out as soon as I'm vested, and if I don't need to hold on to the stock, I'd rather have the money. Like I could see that going both ways.
Well, definitely, it just brings up this major concern with like with all these ununionized workers with this Tesla stock. If the stock goes down, they're gonna be wrecked. They're
Mm,
gonna be wrecked because they've taken the stock and they take less pay too because the stock is so enticing given the fact of the company,
yeah, and like I
which
know,
is it's a very interesting dynamic to think about like the pay compensations for all these companies.
yeah, for sure. And I'm wondering, if like some of the biggest auto manufacturers in America, like the normal Ford and GM and Toyota, if they're all trying to stay really competitive with like modern cars and innovate so that they get more into EV technology because it looks like a lot of the car industry is headed that direction. Like maybe EVs won't completely replace gas cars, but some states, like I think California, has banned, the old ICE engine car by 2035 or something. So, there's definitely some governmental push to try to introduce more EV into cars, but like with this strike, I'm sure that's going to set back some of the big auto manufacturers. So it's kind of like, I'm sure just like we're seeing with how the Hollywood writers strike is just about to end, like they finally got what
It just ended.
yeah, like I mean I think something was being finalized, right? Like there's I just watched like a Wall Street Journal video about it and I don't know when it ended officially. Did it already end?
It ended yesterday, actually,
Oh, okay. All right. So
which
that's when
is
we're
which is
recording
very
this.
coincidental.
Yeah, so when people, see this video, this video might come out a little bit later than when we're recording this right now, but yeah, like we're seeing this tension between mega corporations and the workers. So we're seeing like that, tug of war between making sure people get fairly compensated for all the hard work and with inflation, it's made a lot of people's dollars not stretch as far as it used to. So I'm sure a lot of people across many industries want to get their fair pay and it's a tough situation, but like maybe let's get into more like specifics about some of these car companies and kind of what trends we're seeing because one thing I learned from Warren Buffett at a Berkshire Hathaway meeting is he said in the early 20th century there were hundreds of car manufacturers in America, which kind of surprised me because I had not known there to be more than like maybe a couple of dozen. And, among the biggest ones, kind of like a handful have the most market share. So it's sort of interesting to think like back in the early 1900s, it was a wild west of which car maker would make it. So being that I'm not super knowledgeable about electric vehicles, it's made me a little bit hesitant about companies like Tesla and sure they have the first mover advantage, but can they sustain that and will they continue having an edge maybe like not only in the US but all over the world except for China? Like it kind of makes me wonder like how they're going to be able to stay number one with a lot of competitors nipping at their heels.
So with Tesla, um, you've now seen the somewhat the force of the prices to actually be cut. Because if you look at Tesla prior, it was a luxury car company actually. Because like your average American can't really afford a Tesla because it's 75K,
Mm-hmm.
and then you need the power station, and then you need the home network, and all of that too. And that's not even taking into account on the fact that like some grids can straight up just not support Teslas because in the grand vision of all the Teslas, everyone owns Teslas. All grid cannot support this.
Oh, wow. So like the American electric system itself has to get upgraded in order to handle like more EVs.
Yeah, more EV home charging in Pacific.
Okay. Well, and I heard that, I mean, I'm not sure exactly where EVs will plateau. I know it's in terms of like overall car market share, EVs make up in the double digits now. Like I want to say maybe in the teens or maybe up to 20%. Do you think that's around the ballpark?
Definitely, yeah. Definitely in the next coming ages, you're definitely gonna see the hybrid take over, and then it's probably gonna be slowly transitioned into EV
Mm-hmm.
because I know the hybrid's been around since like 2012.
Yeah, and I know hybrid, like I know Toyota has been one of the, bigger leaders in terms of hybrid. Like they came out with hybrid a long time ago, and like it's been like kind of slower uptake. I'm not sure why. It's been kind of like it seems tougher for Toyota to convince people. Like I feel like I see more Teslas than I see Toyota hybrids, but maybe I'm not always looking for Toyota hybrids, but it just feels that way. But yeah, I bet like I'm sure more hybrids will come online. And I don't know if this stat will be true, but I heard that EVs might plateau when they reach around 40 something percent market share. I don't know if you've heard that too, but that's what I've been kind of hearing lately. But we'll have to see if that ends up panning out, which means I'm guessing we'll see if that comes true, even if we reach that milestone of 40% EVs in the total US car market, we'd probably see double amount of Teslas and double all the other kind of EVs that we're seeing now.
Well, definitely, yeah, you have to remember this one too. Actually, would become fragmentized too, with Tesla, with Tesla probably taking majority share, and then of course Ford, because Ford's plan when I would used to follow Ford, I used to own Ford stock.
Hmm.
Uh, when the plan was to roll out the new dealerships, and the new dealership was actually taking the Tesla model dealership and is making it into the Ford model,
Oh,
into the all one stop.
wow.
That was supposed to be done by 2026.
Oh,
But
wow.
I don't know.
That seems like a quick that if they really can pull that off, that's a lot of change that's got to happen.
Well, this is the issue with that the dealerships are not a fan of the car manufacturers. It's been an ongoing thing since the 50s with the tensions between the dealerships through the car manufacturers.
Okay.
Because you have to remember each location is individually owned by each individual owner because it is a franchisee business.
Mm-hmm.
Through like if you remember like Lithium Motors, they own all them plants slash dealerships. Well, a lot of them are just franchised.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so I guess there's also that tension of kind of like the manufacturers producing it, but then the dealers have to actually pull off selling them, right? And they got to move inventory and ultimately the like maybe there's a good amount of burden on the dealerships. Like I'm not sure who has the most burden. Like it just seems kind of like a tough business all around. And cars to an extent are a little bit outside of my circle of competence, even though I once a long time ago used to own some Fiat Chrysler, but maybe I didn't understand it as much as I should have. So, I've long left kind of that stock and like I haven't ever invested in Stellantis, so I don't know how they're doing, but I remember back in like around 2018 or so, I know that Fiat Chrysler was admitting that they're way behind in catching up to EV, but they know that a lot of consumers value EV technology, so they know they had to change, but they seem kind of like behind at the time. So like it seems like a lot of the car manufacturers are struggling to kind of catch up.
So this is from my experience, this is what Ford does. So if you look at like the Rivian cars, the EVs that Amazon made a huge investment into, which has somewhat failed.
Mm,
But with the Rivian EVs, that a lot of the Ford trucks have the Rivian chassis in them,
mm-hmm.
so they actually get inducted into Ford's ecosystem. So that's how they would get like better EV parts.
So do you think like even though Rivian, should be like, at the forefront of innovation, right? Like Ford is trying to incorporate more of that into the Ford, like in going forward, more of the Ford models.
Yes, yeah, because Ford does do venture. So like when they find like a very small car startup, they will invest heavily into them, and then they will just take a part from them and then just incorporate it into their model cars
Okay,
without
cool.
telling you.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of car manufacturers kind of like borrowed each other's kind of innovations, right? Or even if like I remember back when there used to be, I think Daimler Chrysler back in the day, like some parts of Chrysler cars were like borrowing from, Mercedes and vice versa. Like I know some of that got a little bit hairy there for a little bit. And like I don't know if the overall quality was that great based on some of that being shared. So like what I'm guessing is um like they need to retool a lot of the plants to be able to handle kind of like this new technology and a lot of people have to upskill and probably learn a lot of things very differently than how things used to be. So I feel like there's like a big sea change of what people got to do. And I mean, hopefully that works out for Ford. Why do you think it was a failed investment with Amazon and Rivian?
Because Rivian sales ain't really that they don't they're not really producing cars. And if you look at like the trucks, and specifically Rivian is they're targeting the truck. I've seen one Rivian, and it was a good looking car. It was very blocky though.
Yeah,
That's what I've
it
noticed.
kind of
So,
looks
yeah.
like it looks like a shark head to me with the eyes. Like, have you ever seen like how that looks? Like, so like the like vertical eyes, like the lights, and kind of reminds me of a shark. So in a way, it looks
Oh, yeah,
cool.
definitely.
Like it looks entertaining to look at. I've seen one also, and but like yeah, like what is surprising about that is the general trend in America is to upgrade our cars to be more like trucks, like SUVs and pickup trucks, and you know those giant Suburbans and Tahoes. Like more people are into those, so it's sort of surprising that an EV truck is not kind of being taken up as much yet, but maybe it's sort of early days. Like, and I know, isn't Tesla finally starting production on their Cybertruck after, you know, they showcased it years ago?
Yes, they all. And the first contractors are actually going to be Pepsi.
Oh,
Pepsi is actually agreed to do a contract with them, and I think yeah, there's another food manufacturer agreed to do a contract. I think it was I think it was United Postal,
okay.
USB, not USB, my bad, UPS agreed to do something with them too.
Oh, cool.
So yes, it will be coming out, but there's a really good channel out there called Thunderfoot that breaks down like the not really more or less the failures of Tesla and the the like the mechanicals engineering behind the actual calls.
Wow.
And from my understanding, it's going okay. Not really like anything that could write home about.
Hmm.
But with this space as a whole, you have a lot of people trying to come up with alternate power sources too. I know that plug power has hydrogen power, and that's probably not gonna go anywhere. But I know Toyota is coming out with solid state batteries,
Mm.
which is gonna be a more efficient way to do it. Because if you remember, all the Teslas catching fire if you put a single drop of water on the battery, because it's a
Wow.
lithium battery,
Hmm.
like
So,
like your computer and stuff. If you
yeah.
just put water on it, it's gonna torch.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Or like, I mean, I'm sure maybe that's why a bunch of electric bikes got on fire at some point, right? Like they're kind of like just exposed to the elements, and then they, you know, I've heard like, you know, people's electric bikes burning down buildings.
Definitely, yeah, definitely, yeah. The lithium batteries are still very unstable. Like they're stable, but when they get exposed to water, they get screwed. Which is really funny because of accidentally like the Teslas I've seen is in Florida.
Mm, yeah, and I mean, Florida's so humid and sticky, and like it's like moisture everywhere, right? So how can Tesla escape that?
Definitely, yeah. And with Tesla on a whole too, they've been, of course, I touched upon it prior, but Elon, of course, has been extremely anti-union. He's actually been union busting too.
Mm,
He actually laid off about like half of about like it was either a fourth of the Gigafactory workers in Arizona or Texas for trying to unionize. And then after that they went back on their merry way.
wow.
But they are gonna build a Gigafactory in Mexico too,
Uh-huh.
which would make sense given the fact that we have that trade agreement with Mexico and we're trying to make it them become our main trading partner
Hmm.
instead of China.
Oh yeah, I hear you. Well, of course, and when you mention that, it makes me kind of wonder about, you know, aren't there some significant risks with how a lot of the source materials for EV batteries are coming from China, like nickel, and there's only there's only so few places in the world that produce the necessary components of batteries, and kind of feels like you know, we're going to remain dependent on China for the foreseeable future on some of this stuff.
Definitely, yeah. We're definitely gonna be relying more on CAT-L. That is the biggest man. That's the biggest producer of these electric batteries to date. I know Panasonic's in the game now too, with Tesla partnering with them to make sure that they don't get screwed over by China, given the fact that they already banned Teslas in government facilities, etc.
Yeah, like it looks like China's banning, you know, both Apple and Tesla and their government use. So it's kind of interesting how we're having this tug of war of some of our biggest, the best of American companies are kind of being firewalled in China. So, like, I guess it makes sense because I'm assuming we're doing some of that here too, like with some of their, we're stonewalling some of their companies. So I guess like that's just what some of these major powers do. They try to edge each other out because obviously with AI, we're trying to not give all of them like the best of our semiconductor innovation and IP. So like I can see there's probably going to be some struggle, and they like I'm sure also with China they made lots of inroads with electric vehicle technology a long time ago. So much so that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger made a fortune on BYD ages ago. So like even though they did that and China is like pretty ahead in their own EV technology. What do you think about if China produced really low cost cars? Do you think any of them could be a threat in the US if like say some like super cheap Chinese EV car were to come to America? Do you think they would actually do that, or do you think that's like not even not probably not going to happen?
It probably won't happen, sadly, but this actually did happen with the ICE vehicles with Japan's cars, with Nissan and then Toyota. If you
Mm-hmm.
remember, they took over the market because it was so cheap.
Yeah, which was like cool for Japan, right? But like I feel like back then when there was the rise of Japanese cars, I want to say in the 70s and 80s here, we probably got along better with Japan at that point. Like I'm assuming like we were probably at that time more Japan friendly than we seem to be with China right now. So I'm assuming to protect American business interests, even if the government doesn't always see eye to eye with Elon, I'm sure they would still rather support like all of the EVs that are American made compared to maybe importing them from China. Like I'm assuming like it would just probably decimate American EV like the EV industry here if we let in super cheap EVs from elsewhere, right?
There actually are some super cheap EVs from elsewhere. Think like the Nissan Bolt and like the Nissan Leaf and stuff like that. They all get in here, but I just wouldn't expect like a Neo car to show up,
Mm-hmm.
or like an
Yeah.
X-Paint car to show up,
Yeah. I
or
guess
like
I
a
was
BYD
thinking,
car to show up.
yeah, like I was thinking I don't know how much the EVs cost in China, but I'm guessing they're probably slightly cheaper than even the Nissan. So what I'm saying is like you'll probably still pay kind of normal car prices for most EVs that are available in America by the main manufacturers like Nissan and Ford or whatever. But like for a Chinese EV to try to undercut that seems like unlikely to happen.
Well, definitely, yeah. I don't really see China undercutting in the US market. I can definitely see it happening in the EU market. I can see it happening in the Japanese market. I can definitely see it happening in emerging markets too. I
Mm-hmm.
know that I remember when I used to be in Neo stock, they were making great headways into Europe. So
Mm,
was Tesla, and so was Xpeng, and so was BYD.
mm, yeah. But I guess like, we got to look out for our American interests here. So it makes sense that we're not about to let in the ultra cheap Chinese EV anytime soon. And like yeah, because that would be a big threat to jobs, I bet. Like, in some ways globalization was good for some things, but also kind of not so good for other things like American jobs going overseas. And if all these cheap vehicles are flooding the market, then that could pose a lot of risks to, say, American workers in Detroit. So we probably wouldn't want that because that would just like probably really hurt American auto industry.
Well, definitely, yeah. And another thing is too, with the Chinese government in Pacific kicking out Elon, they're more leaning more towards their own companies via through the backing of them. With a lot of these companies, they have controlling stakes. The Chinese government has controlling stakes slash has majority stake in
Yeah,
these companies
yeah, I've
to
heard
make
about
sure it
that.
does good.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I know that they probably have some amount invested in like Alibaba and Tencent, and so it's sort of like obviously it's not in their interest to introduce more competition to their kind of homegrown companies. Like they want their strong companies to stay strong. I'm sure, just like we would want our companies to stay strong. Except I don't think the American government is actually directly invested in a lot of companies. Like they maybe maybe the government might buy some bonds, but I don't know if they even buy corporate bonds. So like we're it's not the same level of investment by far, from what I can tell, between how China's government is to some extent actually directly invested in some of their biggest Chinese companies, and the American government doesn't really do that.
No, no. From my understanding, the American government stays out of it, except for like giving except for getting credits. That's where they get heavily invested. Because you
Right,
have to
yeah.
remember this one. You have to remember this too. Tesla didn't get the EV credits for the big bills from like 2021 for the EV push and the massive infrastructure push.
Oh yeah.
But given the fact they have so many credits from the US prior, because a lot of Tesla's business model was when they were unprofitable was selling these credits to other companies to
Hmm.
gain growth and just for this tone out more vehicles. That was in the early days of Tesla though, probably like 2017 is when they just was racking up nonstop credits and just selling them because they had nothing to do with them.
Wow. So I mean, it sounds like Tesla has been pretty okay, even though they weren't additionally benefited by the latest legislation.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Tesla right now has the most leading advantage from what I've seen with their network, of course. With the network of superchargers, is actually you can actually drive across country.
Hmm.
You'll be able
Yeah.
to do that since like 2018, I guess.
Well, that's good. Well, and I know there's like been some, kind of controversy about like the different plugs. Like I know there's like a European EV plug and the Tesla one, and there's some other competitor ones. And I'm sure Tesla is trying to force people to use more of their model.
That actually is not it. It was the case, but it was kind of the case viewed through natural market forces
Hmm.
because in 2017, you can use like Fords on Tesla stuff. You
Hmm.
can use Velours and BOWs, etc. on those stuff, but they do have a separate plug. They don't have a Tesla plug, they have a universal plug. From what I've gathered slash what I'm assuming is gonna happen is it's gonna be like the C charger. Eventually Europe is gonna come in and then eventually it's gonna be reformed to make it one universal plug so everyone can just make standardized plugs.
Yeah, because it's already pretty standardized with things like when you get gasoline. So why should it be so complicated? And with the EU forcing Apple to adopt USB-C, I'm assuming there will probably be both governmental regulation and market forces that force more standardization so that there's not like hundreds of EV charger plugs.
Definitely, yeah. I think they got it down now to like six. And that's just each manufacturer has their own plug, but each manufacturer can use Teslas, but you just have to
Okay.
click it on the app.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I mean, obviously that's giving more advantage to Tesla. So I can see why there's a lot of fans for Tesla, and I can understand, why a lot of people like what Elon has done. I mean, he's been a true one of a kind person, like once in a generation, who has made such a tremendous impact on so many things, like not even just cars and batteries, but also in the space world, and with taking over Twitter, now known as X, which as far as I know, almost nobody calls it that. They still say like X, formerly known as Twitter. So like they still find a way to slide Twitter in there. So
Um,
he's probably
yeah,
going to need
definitely.
to work on rebranding that more.
Well, when I've used Twitter was it initially directs me to x.com that redirects me to Twitter, which is funny.
Yeah, that's crazy. But like everything still looks like Twitter, like it's still blue. Like it, you kind of forget. Like I forget that it's called X, and I just think of it still as Twitter because it like unless like unless we're really forced to. I feel like it's hard to just think of it as X because it's just one letter, like it doesn't stand out as super kind of
out
catchy
there.
yet. What?
Like it doesn't. It's not really like out there.
Yeah. Like it's as if Tesla rebranded to just the letter T and now everybody has to call it T and then, people could be confused what you're talking about like would you like to have some tea? It's like, are we talking about like the beverage? But anyway, sorry to go off on that little tangent, but it's just kind of like kind of funny how Elon has had tremendous influence, but I mean, the the people still need to decide what they really want. And, I think a lot of EVs are still kind of pricey for people. And also, people have to figure out, like, can they afford that? And what happens when the batteries get old and can they, like, swap it out? Like, a lot of people are holding on to their gas cars for a long time, like more than 10 years. And are we going to see the same thing eventually happen with EVs? Like, can you even hold onto an EV car for more than a decade? Like, I think some of that remains to be seen how durable they're going to end up being, especially with the battery costing a lot. Like, and if it costs like as much to replace a battery as it does like a transmission engine, I wonder if like people are going to put up with that.
From what I'm seeing is the batteries end up lasting about 2 years. Um, they end up lasting about 2 years to 5 years with wear and tear, of course. You can just straight up buy another battery. I think it's gonna run you about, don't quote me, I think it's gonna run you about like 2K for a new
Mm-hmm.
battery, 2K to 5K for a new battery. And of course, you need to get a warranty on your batteries too. They do awful warranties on batteries, thank God.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's still kind of a little bit Wild West to me. So I haven't like invested in EV technology, so it's interesting to learn about, but definitely, still an area that unless you really know what you're doing to proceed carefully before you invest in any given company, because it still feels like there's so much kind of that's going to change. Like even with Tesla, as even though they're the number one in America for EV stuff, like there's still so much that's changing and evolving all the time. So, I think it's really great to learn about. So I really appreciate you sharing all your insights. Is there anything you wanted to last share before we might wrap up for today?
In this space, I would be concerned about the Chinese companies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in this space, I would be concerned actually about Tesla. In this space, I'd be concerned very much about the unions workers. I would be concerned about the GM CEO because if you look at the chart, but when she actually took her initial CEO spot, the stock has actually gone down $1 since IPO.
Wow.
So doing that whole entire time, she's kind of just created value destruction.
Oh man. Well, and I heard also I saw in Wall Street Journal that like I think GM CEO pay is like a huge multiple of what the average employee makes, which is kind of
the
insane.
the average CEO now, from what I've seen from studies, is 1,163 compared to like 1980, what the average employee, if compared to CEO, the gap was about 40. Now
Wow.
it's over 1,000.
That's insane. Yeah, I mean the amount of millions that CEOs are getting paid and it's like not being stopped. Like I think even Buffett and Munger kind of complained about that, like that CEO pay is out of control. So I don't know if any of that's going to change because a lot of CEOs are buddy buddy with their boards and if you're kind of buddy buddy and you play golf together, like a board is not going to stand up to the CEO and being like you're being paid too much when everybody else is being paid too much. So it's like a vicious cycle where they keep getting paid more and more and like you're to your point they may not necessarily be actually delivering shareholder value based on how the stock's performing.
Which is funny because she gets paid in vast majority shares, and she's
Yeah,
losing money on those shares.
yeah, I guess that's sort of a that should be like a negative situation, but somehow it's still not because I'm sure, if she or any CEO, I'm not trying to speak negatively about anybody, but if any CEO cashes in on their stock, I guess like they're being paid way more than the normal person that I guess they don't always like maybe care. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a tough situation, but hopefully, corporate America will kind of figure some of that out, because otherwise, this is why maybe we're having so many strikes, because a lot of people want to get fair pay. And if they see the CEO making crazy money and they're not getting fair pay, no wonder we're having as many strikes as we are.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely one of the most causes for the most severe unrest, from what I've seen from the through the news sources.
Yeah.
Because
So,
I end up watching like a few pieces on this.
mhm.
Ford wants a 40% pay increase, and according to the head, they would still be Ford would still be able to make millions off their cars even with the pay increase, because labor only accounts for 5% of the whole entire cars net
Wow.
profit.
Well,
Like that's
then,
some,
yeah. Yeah, no wonder people are wanting to up their pay. So yeah, like it just goes to show, I think a lot of corporations could afford to pay more people, like more what they deserve, and it's always like going to be a struggle. So yeah, I mean, that may not be the most upbeat note, but let's wrap it up there for now. And thanks so much, Gabe, for talking with me about cars and EVs. It's very exciting, and I look forward to seeing how it develops, and hopefully we'll be enhanced as a society for all this, like, and trying to help the environment and all that feel good stuff. So let's hope for the best. And I'll talk to you again soon.
oh yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Bye.